Do you see admitting your mistakes as a failure? Do you imagine that leadership requires you to admit no wrongdoing or failure as it's a weakness? Today I'm going to try and convince you that the ability to admit your mistakes is a powerful leadership trait, and how you can do this so you don't lose face. It might seem counterintuitive, but owning up to your mistakes can actually strengthen your leadership reputation. So first, I'm going to run through really quickly why admitting your mistakes as a leader actually matters. First of all, it builds trust. When you acknowledge your mistakes, you show your team that you're human, you're not afraid to be vulnerable, and you're not a liar. This builds trust and respect. Second, it demonstrates accountability. Taking responsibility for your mistakes shows that you're accountable for your actions or decisions, and you're prepared to learn from them. Number 3, it encourages learning and growth. By admitting your mistakes, you create a safe space for your team to help learn and grow, and to help them admit their own mistakes too. And lastly, it improves decision making. Reflecting on your mistakes can help you identify any loopholes that you might want to not cross over ever again. Reflecting on your mistakes can help you identify areas of improvement or weakness so that you can make better decisions in the future. So consider the times where you might have observed blame shifting or just outright denial in the workplace. Perhaps someone has conveniently forgotten that they once suggested an amazing and fail-proof solution for a project, which is now in fiery ruin, and they are blankly looking around, wondering who is to blame for this stupid idea. Perhaps your boss has gone back on what was previously emphatic support for you completing that high-value deal, and is even talking in a way that would indicate that they are disappointed in you. I have experienced many forms of blame shifting and denial and liars in the workplace. It has often been in the form of convenient memory loss, where they have forgotten previous endorsements for decisions or projects, or having given direction in one particular way that is now appearing to have actually meant the complete opposite of what they had said. And I'm now in the firing line for the misinterpretation of what seemed like a clear direction. Observing this type of blame shifting and failure to admit mistakes made me distrust their leadership and second guess future directions that they provided. I had one role where this would occur on such a regular basis that I took to writing down the directions that I was taking and sending a follow-up email just to restate the actions as a light form of paper trail. While this was satisfying, referring them to said email when they would conveniently forget direction, it actually didn't help, as they didn't just lack accountability, they were sly. They would never actually respond to any of my actions emails, and then could retort with, well, I never actually read that email that you sent. And just because you say that I told you to do something in an email doesn't mean that I actually did tell you to do it. I didn't send the email. Eventually I quit, but I did make sure to get my ducks in a row first. And if you're thinking it's time to quit, make sure you check out the video on my screen to help you with that. So if admitting mistakes in leadership is something that you must do, how do you do it in a way that ensures that you don't feel ashamed and like you are losing respect from your team? There are some steps that you can take with this, but the first one is to ensure that you acknowledge the mistake. Admit your mistake honestly and directly. I find it is much easier to do this as early as possible too. For example, if you're in a meeting with your team and someone points out that perhaps the direction of the project or whatever you're working on has an error in it, don't try and brush over it and speak over them. Listen to them. I'm sure that we have all been in situations where there is a glaringly obvious error in a presentation or data, and have seen somebody try and rush through it as if no one would notice. If you see it and no one else has, and it's your error, just acknowledge it. Just say, oh, I can just see that there looks to be an error on the screen there with the data. I'll look into that and follow up. Or if someone else points it out, thank them and acknowledge that it looks to be a mistake, and you'll have a look into it afterwards. It doesn't need to be a big deal in those types of situations. However, brushing over what doesn't seem to be a big deal in those type of situations and kind of ignoring it or denying it is definitely worse and makes it a big deal in terms of restoring your trust with your team. In a big situation, like a project has completely fallen over because you've made the wrong decision, it's important to just face it and be honest. It can help to restate what the purpose was of the direction that you were taking with that project and where it is now and what that mistake was. Step 2 is to take responsibility. Avoid making excuses or blaming others. If the project has to be unpicked, acknowledge this and take it on. If you are the leader or the manager, the buck stops with you, and it's important to take responsibility and ownership for the error. Do not talk about anyone else who could be to blame. This is actually a toxic leadership trait, which there is a video about linked on your screen. Don't try and deflect the mistake onto data, information, or anything that could be perceived as shifting blame. It's important, if you want to be trusted as a leader, that you can take the heat without needing to dissolve yourself of responsibility. If you hear a manager apologising for a mistake, and then the next thing out of their mouth is that they knew the data wasn't right, or the figures that John provided were fake news, then the credibility is reduced. As then your team are going to be really nervous that if they make a mistake, you're going to throw them under the bus too. So then it's really hard to get them to commit fully to future projects if they're nervous about if it goes wrong that they're going to be blamed. It's also important that you don't talk about anyone who could be responsible to anyone in the team, as that kind of conversation tends to get around, and that sounds a lot like gossip, which will really damage your leadership reputation. Now, for those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Nikki and I've been in leadership for over 17 years and have gone from leading just 2 people to leading leaders of large teams. And I do lots of videos about leadership from my experience. So if you're enjoying this video, I would really like it if you would subscribe and let me know in the comments what topics you'd like me to cover. Now, the third step in admitting mistakes is to apologize. Express genuine remorse for any negative impact that the mistake might have had on your team or your team members. Acknowledging the mistake also means apologizing for any unintended consequences. This could just be the team's time spent working on it that is now feeling a little wasted. It could just be apologizing for how disappointed everybody must be feeling for where things are at. Step 4 is to learn from the mistake. Reflect on what went wrong and the lessons that you can pick up from it. This is really important if you don't want to have to keep admitting and acknowledging the same mistake over and over again. And this is where admitting mistakes is powerful, but not so much if you keep admitting the same mistake again and again. You're going to lose a little bit of faith. So ensuring that you're reflecting on what has happened and what could have caused it to go wrong, and what responsibility you really had in that situation, and what you could put in place so that it doesn't occur again. It can be quite hard to admit that not only are you wrong, but now you're going to spend some time digging into why you were so wrong, but it is part of leadership. Step 5 is to implement corrective actions. Take the steps you need to prevent similar things occurring again. This is part of the self-reflection, but it's also putting another layer on there. It could be that you need a new process, or something that you put in place to reduce the risk. So, as an example, if you're in a scenario where you've made a mistake in a crucial decision, instead of downplaying or denying, you could say something like, I have made a mistake in my recent decision of X and Y. I really apologise for all the time you've all spent working on this, and I'm already taking step 1 and step 2 to help rectify the situation. I would love to hear your feedback to support the steps that I'm taking and to help me ensure it doesn't happen again. Obviously, you need more sincerity than what I just put into that one, because it's a real situation. By owning your mistakes, you demonstrate strong leadership qualities and you inspire your team to do the same. It's not about being perfect, it's about being authentic and learning from your mistakes. And check out the video linked on your screen all about authentic leadership and its power. And thanks very much for watching.